Hello everyone, welcome to a presentation on fire extinguishers for firefighters. In this presentation, we're going over the types of fire extinguishers, the classes of fire that are extinguished with these extinguishers, and where you'd find them, how you would service them, how you'd use them, that sort of thing. Some of this is fairly basic, but we're all here to learn together, and a refresher is good every once in a while. Alright, starting off. How do fire extinguishers put out a fire? Well, there's about four main ways they do it. Smothering. This would be excluding oxygen from the burning process, so taking away one of those sides of the fire triangle, or if you're more advanced, the fire tetrahedron. We'll get there at some point. Cooling, which obviously is reducing the temperature of the burning material to the point where it can no longer burn effectively. Chain breaking, which is interrupting the chemical chain reaction in the burning process. This is like your, and we'll get into these farther along, your dry chemical fire extinguishers, your ones where they discharge a powder that interacts with the burning object and inhibits its ability to burn. And lastly, saponification, which forms an oxygen excluding soapy foam surface on whatever's burning. This, as far as I know, is limited to your cooking fires where you have a special extinguishing agent that interacts with the burning oils or grease, and that creates this soapy layer that puts out the fire. Alright, some the basic methods of operation, obviously. We have manual pump fire extinguishers. That's your classic wildland backpack. There's no pressure in the tank of water. It's basically a big squirt gun. You are the force that causes the water to spray out. Stored pressure. These are your everyday hanging on the wall at the grocery store fire extinguishers. There's powder or another agent in there. They pressurize the whole container. And then when you use it, you pull the pin, you squeeze the fire extinguisher handle, the pressure is released, and that takes the powder or whatever else is in there with it. And then lastly, pressure cartridge extinguishers. These are similar to the stored pressure, except as you can see with our old school heavy fire extinguisher here, these weigh a ton. In here, this is atmospheric pressure. There's the powder in here. They fill it through here, screw the cap on. There's no pressure in here until you go to use it, at which point you'd pull the pin that's over here. There's a container of pressurized gas. You press the little handle. The pressure goes into here, and now you have a charged fire extinguisher with powder and pressure all combined. Alright, extinguisher classification. This is what your fire extinguisher, whatever you happen to pick up, whatever you're using, will effectively put out. Your Class A fires, those are your ordinary combustibles. That's your paper, your plastic, your wood, your everyday run-of-the-mill items. Class B, your flammable liquids, obviously. That's your gasoline to a certain extent, your maybe some oil, that kind of thing. Class C, energized electrical equipment. Computers that are plugged in, so on and so forth. If you de-energize, if you cut the power to your computer that's on fire, you then turn it into a Class A fire. So Class C is energized electrical equipment, being the difference between A and C. Class D are your combustible metals. Those are your magnesiums, stuff that you'd find vehicle engine blocks, batteries in electric vehicles that have a lot of metals in them, that sort of thing. And Class K is your cooking oils. Obviously, those are your kitchens, restaurants, even to a certain extent, someone's deep frying on their stove or frying food on their stove, get distracted, and their cooking oil catches on fire. That sort of thing. All right, starting off the top. There's a few different kinds of water extinguishers. One that I don't have listed is pretty easy to explain is your straight water fire extinguisher. They're good for Class A fires. They're the ones that I see on a lot of fire trucks, on the engine. I've heard them called, water cans, silver bullets, other nicknames for them. It's this guy right here. You fill it with water. They got a little air compressor attachment here. You charge it with air, and it's good to go. I have seen people put a little bit of foam or a little bit of dish soap in these, and that helps stretch the water a little bit. You can put out a little bit more, get a little bit better effect than just having straight water with these, if you do that. Next up is water mist. I have never seen one of these out in the wild, but they are similar to the standard water extinguisher, but they used special deionized water, which takes out the conductivity of it. It turns it into a fine mist. It doesn't connect electricity, and therefore it becomes safe for Class C fires. And then AFFF, also the long form of aqueous film forming foam. It contains foam, love it or hate it, with all the recent news about it for the past few years. But it's good for putting out Class B liquid, flammable liquid fires. Here, we got our foam fire extinguisher, our AFFF. These look a lot like our regular old Class A extinguishers we got over here. Main difference is, one, they usually say foam right on the side. And B, if you notice, they got a little extra piece here on the end. Compared to down here, where it's just got the little squirt gun tip. Oops. This helps get air into the mixture as it leaves the fire extinguisher to give it that nice foamy, fluffy foam blanket. If you put a little bit of foam or soap in here, it really doesn't foam up. It just kind of sits there and soaks in. Clean agents and CO2 extinguishers. Clean agents were developed to replace older fire extinguishing agents that were bad for the environment. They are a rapidly evaporating liquid that leaves no residue, and they're good for Class A, B, C fires. The sticking point with the residue is that they're used a lot in electrical rooms or server rooms where there's a lot of computers, a lot of sensitive electrical equipment where A, you don't want to spray water in there because it's electrical equipment, or B, it's very expensive, and if you were to go in there and spray, say, a dry chemical agent that leaves powder everywhere, that could ruin electrical equipment that would otherwise be fine, that's where these get used a lot. Which, as a side note, if you have these in your area, be aware, because if the system discharges, you could go in to an area that doesn't have oxygen, which isn't good for anybody. So these fires, especially the server rooms where they have a discharge of the clean agents, you need to be on air for those. Even if you think it's nothing worse than walking into a room that doesn't have any oxygen in it. And we got CO2 extinguishers. These are another reasonably common one. They discharge just straight CO2 gas. Good for Class B and C fires. And these are identified by they have these big horns on the nozzle to help insulate your hand, because CO2, as it expands and comes out, there'll be frost on these. These get real cold real quick. So when you use these, hold the nozzle back here. Don't grab it out here, because it'll get real cold real fast. These, especially the CO2, are affected by wind, Therefore, yeah, you can use them outside, but just be aware. You use them, these are the ones, especially where you'll use it, the fire will go out, you turn to walk away, the CO2 dissipates, whatever's burning is still hot, it gets some oxygen back, and it restarts on you. So these especially, you have to be aware that just because the fire's out now doesn't mean it won't start again in the near future. And they come in different sizes. These are your ones you have on the truck or find in the business, and these big wheeled ones you see around airports, helipads, that sort of thing. These work the same way as these, they're just much bigger. The good old dry chemical extinguishers. They use a fine chemical powder of different properties, different substances go into them. You find them as either class B and C or A, B, and C. These are the ones you see everywhere. These are the ones at the grocery store, the gas station, have a couple on all the trucks, the ones hanging in the fire station. These are the ones you get when you buy a new trailer. Just they're the ones that you get at the hardware store. They're the fire extinguisher when everyone thinks fire extinguisher. Now the chemicals in these can be corrosive, so if you spray one or one discharges and it makes a mess everywhere, aside from being a really fine powder that's the ultimate mess to clean up, speaking from experience, they can damage equipment and paint over time, that sort of thing. Another use I see for the powder in these is departments will take the powder, put them in Ziploc style bags, the clear plastic little sandwich bags, and then keep them on the truck with their chimney fire equipment, because if there is a chimney fire, you can take your little plastic bag full of dry chemical, drop it down the chimney, the bag melts, and then the dry chemical hopefully puts out the fire. Which leads to our chimney bombs down here. Dry chemical is not the same as dry powder. They're very close. Sometimes the words get confused. They start getting used interchangeably, but they are, according to the NFPA, the book, they are different. There's several different powders for different metals. Obviously, what works on this metal won't work on that metal, or a powder that works on one or two won't work on a third, that sort of thing. These extinguishing agents, and by extension their extinguishers, have to be used rather vigorously. You have to build up a layer on the burning material. You have to be aware of reignition because metal burns really hot. So if you put it out with one of these, oh, it's out, sweet, mission accomplished, and the metal's still super hot, it could break down the material in the fire extinguisher, and there are stories of like car battery fires, class D fires, that get put in water or sunk in a pool of water and they burn for hours and hours before they go out. Because once class D fires start going, they don't want to stop. And then for really, really big class D fires, like at metal shops, or I've heard of, scrap dumpsters full of magnesium at like car parts places, tire rims catching on fire. Sometimes all you can do is just bury it with whatever you have laying around. And loaders full of sand, idle enough more metal, smother it with itself, kind of contrary to what you would want to do, but it works. So, and it's a lot of sand and a lot of metal, like dump trucks load sometimes. All right, operation and inspection. If you're watching this, probably you've already gone through, the introduction to firefighting, or you're in Fire 1 class, or you work at a place where you've had fire extinguisher training, so we're not going to go over this hand-holdingly, but just to refresh you, the standard: pull the little pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and then sweep your agent back and forth until the fire goes out. Watch for reignition, that sort of thing. Inspection. Now, inspection isn't something that the average firefighter will do a whole lot. You will if you're the fire inspector or doing a business inspection, the once a year or twice a year, whatever it would be. But still, this is something you should be doing on the extinguishers in the station, on the trucks at the beginning of shift, that sort of thing. So it's something that's helpful to go over. Short, sweet, to the point. You gotta check the pressure gauge. Right here, so this one is good. It's right in the middle of the green. It's not super low, it's not super high. Pretty self-explanatory. You gotta check it for damage. You're gonna look to make sure all the labels aren't ripped off or torn off or unreadable. You're gonna make sure the little plastic thing, the little plastic safety lock is in place or the pin is in place properly. You're gonna check the hose, make sure it's not all cracked or damaged, it's not loose. You're gonna check for proper location. If you go to check the extinguishers on the truck and they're not there, kind of a problem. And then you're gonna look at the inspection tag. This more so for if you're the fire inspector doing building inspections, because the ones I've seen on the trucks, some are tagged, some aren't. The water cans, for example, the Class A's, you can refill those in the station. Those usually don't have a tag. Those are just fill and recharge as needed. And I'll be honest, us firefighters are pretty bad at keeping these in date. I've seen them on the trucks that have expired 2 years ago, but we go in, look at them, and go, yep, everything looks good, and we roll with it. Should you? Maybe not, but we do. Not here to blame. Alright. Hopefully that was short, sweet, to the point. Covered all the high points. Hope to get into more advanced stuff down the road further on. But the whole point of this channel is to go from day one, very basic fire school stuff, to operating trucks, flowing water, doing the math for that. So, thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see, as always, let me know.